I learned that a horrible thing that happened to me when I was, I was kind of a newish nurse. Um, Probably had been a nurse maybe about 10 years or so. My, my partner, my wife, had cancer, and she was dying. We had two beautiful little boys, and as things were progressing and she was failing all treatment, I just cared for her at home. My best friend also had a terminal disease, and I moved him into the house too. So I would work 3 12-hour shifts, and I had someone come in and watch them, and I would go to work. But then on my days off, 4 days a week, I took care of my friend, my spouse, and then we had a 7 and 9 year old boys. And my friend died, and and then the boy's mother died. She had cancer, and it was just me then as a single dad with two young boys and working, and we got through it. Well, one day I was in the house. The boys were in the front yard. Boys were in the front yard playing, and and I heard this horrible noise, and and crashing and screaming, and what the heck is that? So I go out in the front yard, with seeing what's going on. There's a car in the yard, and the neighbors are coming over and screaming and yelling, and ended up there was red everywhere. I'm thinking, what's that? I'm a nurse. I just withdrew totally from what happened in that situation, and I just stood there. What's going on? Why is there a yard in the yard? Why is there a car in the yard? And the neighbors are doing something and trying to pull something out from underneath the car. And then there was this inebriated man just walking around, like, what happened? And ended up the red that I saw was the blood of my sons. A drunk had lost control of the car and just drove right through our own front yard. Kids were playing in their own front yard, and he killed them, ran them right over. And I froze. I couldn't do anything. I was absolutely useless. And what wonderful neighbors I had. And yeah, they're trying to pull the bodies out, and they were stuck under the wheels. And they called for help, and people came and they took over completely. I just stood there and just cried, and they were dead. So their mother died 3 months prior, and then they died, and I don't know. The in-laws came in and did all the funeral arrangements. I just was absolutely useless, and I couldn't go back to work. And I told my boss, and she said, take as much time as you can. And um, um, I never went to the funeral. I couldn't go. I couldn't. I've never been to their grave. This has been 35 years. This was 1989, and I just stayed in the house. I I couldn't do. I was absolutely useless. And with all the experiences I had had up to that time with spirit, you would think I would still, I would understand. Oh, they've gone on and everything's fine. But it was, a 7 and 9 year old, and screaming and laughing and everything throughout the day. And then all at once, the house was so silent. It was like screaming in silence, and it was just me. Everyone died. My friend, the mother, the kids, and I'm there alone. So I had wonderful friends, and they came over and just let me vegetate and brought food and took care of me. And I ended up sitting in the house for a solid year. I didn't go to work. I would look out the window every now and then and see cars drive by and people walking their dogs, and I would think, how are you guys having a life when my world stopped? There's absolutely no life left in my life. How are you guys doing this? So I had paint, gallons and gallons of paint. So I painted over the windows. I completely painted over. I had these great big picture windows and completely painted out the whole world. It was just total darkness. And I sat in total darkness for a year. And my friends, my wonderful friends, and they never tried to get me to change or straighten up or whatever. They would just, come over and bring food, and I'd order pizza. And had a TV set. We got 3 channels, and I watched that, and I just sat in the house. I just froze. And then one day, it was early in the morning, about 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting again in total darkness and watching TV. And up in the corner of the room, it was like sparkles. It was like a sparkle. I don't know. We have them in America. You light them, and they're like silver little lights. And there was like these little sparkles, like diamonds. And they started appearing. There'd be a couple, and then a ton, and then loads of them. So maybe it was 4 feet wide, 1 feet tall. It was oblong shape, glittering, sparkling, white diamonds, lights. And I thought, oh my God, it's an electrical fire. Now what am I going to do? And I'm just staring at it, thinking, what, I can't leave the house. What, I guess I'll call the police or something, fire department or whatever. And then out of that bar of sparkles and light came 2 voices, and they were young executive men, maybe 27, 28 years old. They both had distinct voices, but very young, and they were very, very stern with me and started telling me off. And they said, listen, we've had enough of you. We've got so much work to do, so much important work. We have so many people relying on us, so much important endeavors that has been going on for a long time, and people are relying on us to get our jobs done, but we can't because of you, because you've been holding us back, because of you. It's all about you. You're holding us back. We can't move forward. We can't do our job, and it's got to stop right now. And then when one would stop, the other voice would take over, and it says, yes, the only nice thing that was ever said was, we appreciate what you did for us. And instinctively, I knew it was my 2 boys. My 2 boys died at ages 7 and 9. But now, a year later, they sounded like very intelligent, well-educated young executives. And they just kept telling me off. You got to stop this. We're not going to put up with this one more minute. It's stopping now. You can't keep holding on to us. We got to go, and this is it. This is your only warning. This is the only time we're going to tell you, let go. Let go now. And they were just told me off. It was like a bad police officer, pulling you over and letting you have it. And I'm thinking, like, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was, doing anything bad. I miss you so much. I can't tell you how bad I hurt that you're no longer here. And they didn't respond. It wasn't like, oh, Daddy, we miss you, we love you. They just told me off, one after the other. It just went on and on. Maybe 3 or 4 minutes. It seemed like a much longer because, I'm like, yes, sir, I'm sorry. Yes, I'll stop. Yes, I'll let you go. And then the sparkling got smaller and smaller and smaller. And tiny and tiny and tiny. And then finally it was just a couple sparks. And then I'm back in the darkness again. And it was my boys. My boys came back and told me off. I didn't realize I was mourning them so much. And I didn't realize that mourning them not only was holding me back and holding me in total darkness inside, I was evidently holding them in darkness too. I was holding them back from the life and the spiritual experiences that they're supposed to be having at this time. Missing someone's healthy, that's okay. But mourning someone is lethal. It's lethal for me, and it was lethal for my boys. I had no idea that my attachment not only limited my experience, but was limiting their experiences too. And I remember one night in a dream, it kind of came to me that I had turned myself into a living headstone for my two sons. When I buried them, I buried me too. And after this experience, I turned the headstone into stepping stones, and I was able to move on. That day, because of this, my attitude changed 160 degrees. And I called up my old job, and my boss had moved off, but everybody knew me. And I said, you know what, I need to come back to work. And they said, well, come on in, put in an application. So I had to call somebody up to come jump my car because they hadn't started my car in a year. And I got cleaned up and did my hair and shaved and got in the car and drove to work and put in an application. And they hired me right then and there. I started the next day after staying in the house for a solid year in total darkness. I mean, it really hurts your eyes going out in the light after that. I started work the next day, started back in orientation. It was that quick and that sudden of a healing that I got when my boys touched in with me. And what a glorious thing that was. When they freed me, they freed themselves. When I freed me, I freed them. We freed each other. And so I'm back home and I'm going to work. And soon I'm back into hospice because that was going to be my dedication after this. I was a very technical nurse prior to that. Now I wanted to work with the dying people, and I went to work with in the AIDS facility. But I had to deal with all this paint on the window, and I had these little tiny razor blades. And my friends came over and said, we'll help scrape it off. I said, no, this is something I need to do. And so it took months. Little bit scraping off all these windows just full of paint. And the more I scraped off, the more the light came in. And I thought I could turn my back on the light. I thought I could paint it out. I thought I could paint the world and the universe and God and everything that is out. But all I did was just shut my eyes. And the more I scraped the paint off and the more sun would be coming through, the light's always there. It's always there. It never turns off. It never turns away from you. You can shut your eyes. You can try to paint over it. You can turn your back against it. You can spray paint it. You can pull curtains. You can say, no, 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 it doesn't exist. It's there. It's there whether you accept it or not, and it's there for you. It's just waiting for you to, again, remove those blocks that separate you from it. And prior to this, I think I had my blocks pretty well removed because I had so many wonderful experiences. I tumbled on this one. Mourning. Mourning is lethal. And again, missing is healthy. Mourning is lethal. And I had to relearn that lesson to never turn away from the light again. No matter what else, it's the most important thing that can happen to you in your life and in your next life, wherever it is you are. And I scraped and scraped and scraped and finally opened up all the windows. And I have never, ever separated myself from the light again. And what a wonderful healing that was. What a wonderful, and I'm so blessed that I got to see my boys. I know they're fine. They're doing something. I've never seen them again. I never tried to call them back. I've learned after that. I don't want to get told off like that again. I know they're happy and they're doing stuff and they're having an adventure and they've got a purpose. That's you don't just float around playing harps up there. there's progress and growing and unfoldment constant. And oh, what a marvelous experience that was. I am so grateful. And that's the story about my boys. See, I was missing bodies. I was missing two tiny little cute, cuddly, giggly, sweet, funny, fun to tickle little boy bodies. But the real them is spirit. And that experience was over here in the physical, and they moved on. But there's still such a connection that we had that, and I think it's not just with your loved ones, I think it's with everybody in the whole universe. And that connection is real. And though they had moved on and matured and gone to a whole other state of consciousness, still me holding on affected them. And that really gives me something to think about. You know, when you think bad thoughts of somebody or good thoughts or any kind of thoughts, the power that that has, that it goes to them, but also whoever else in the entire universe. We really need to watch what we think and feel because those are real things. After this happened, I had another dream, and spirit kind of, it gives me funny little dreams, and I have to think about, what are you trying to show me? And I had somebody at work that I worked with, and he was very mean to people, very mean to each other, and I would just wave at him and smile. And if he was mean to me, you know, I buried my kids. You know, no one, no one can upset me after that. And in a dream, I saw him, and he was walking down a street, and he was cussing somebody out and telling him off. And then in the dream, I saw him laying in the gutter, and the person he was cussing out was standing on the sidewalk. In the dream, they were both on the sidewalk, but all at once he was in the gutter. And my spirit, the feeling I got, and I try not to intellectualize, I try to feel, because to me, spirit comes in moods and feelings and impressions. And the feeling was spirit, our soul, a we as soul, can only look one way, and that's up. We can only look up. We can only look to that divine source. It's an illusion to think you can look down. This came to me in the dream. It's an illusion to look down. You can only look up. So, in the dream, when he was cussing this person off on the sidewalk, and then all at once he's in the gutter, it hit me. When he looks down on people, he's actually just below them. He has now placed himself below them because spirit can only look up. And whenever you look down on anybody, you have just placed yourself below them. Because spirit can only look up to God. It can only look up to the universe or whatever you want to call it. It can't look down. And from that, I've always watched every single word and thought and feeling that I've had. And if something negative comes through, I just throw it off and say, oh, I make a little joke about it and laugh it off. Somebody's mad at me, well, big deal, so what? Um, it gives us an opportunity to build a deeper, better relationship down the road. See people as high as you possibly can in spirit, as their true form, as little sparks of God, like the little twinkly things that I saw when my boys were on this thing. I don't know what it was. Was that their soul? I don't know. But whenever you see anybody or everybody as high as possible, you're just like that much below them. You're up there too. And if you see people down as, low and undeserving or whatever, you're just that much below them. You've placed yourself. It's your choice. There's so many things you can't choose in life, but you can choose where you place your attention. You can choose the attitude that you're going to have, how you're going to react to a situation, and you can choose when, where, and how you change where you put your attention. You can put it on something higher or something lower, but actually you can't put it on lower because you're just below it. No matter everything in the universe is between you and God. That's the connection we have, and that's just been life changing. What a simple little thing that is. I mean, that's it's profound, but it's also very, very simple. I think the universe keeps things incredibly simple. You can say the truth of the universe probably in just a couple sentences, not books and books and books and all these things that people write, trying to make a living or whatever. I think the universe just keeps it very simple. Love each other, look up, hold to the hand of your friend. When someone stumbles, grab their hand and lift them up. What simple little things. That's all there is. And eventually, when this is over, we move on to something bigger and greater. And that's what I've gotten out of life and all my wonderful, incredible experiences. And I thank the universe for every single one of them, including the loss of my boys. I couldn't be there to protect them. I couldn't I couldn't hold them or hold their hands when they took their last breath. But as 17 years as a hospice nurse and 20 years as an emergency room nurse, and then I spent 5 years as a burn nurse, and I could take care of those people. I could hold their hands when they took their last breath, or their mothers or fathers or their children or whatever. I I was blessed with the opportunity to be able to support people, spirit moving on to the next level, and then how it affected all their loved ones that were around them. It's been an absolutely blessing. I am so glad I became a nurse. But anybody else in any other field, you can do the same thing too, because everybody's stumbling or not stumbling and going through life, and you can just choose at any moment to see people as soul in the highest level, the purest form that they actually are, not as their bodies, but see them as soul, and uh, and you're just like a, a slice of paper below them. This is my interpretation. This is me. I try not to interpret much, but this just feels right. This just feels like this is the way it's set up. Interesting because for me it was so natural. And then other nurses just would kind of close that off. It's so much easier seeing a patient as like a leg and an arm and something completely neutral, non-human. That's how they deal with it. But then I kind of feel maybe that nurse and I were put together by the universe for to just maybe crack open crack open those doors inward just a little bit more for them and allow them to get to share the light in the universe speaking through them too. So I think many of them that I've worked with, it's been over 40 years now as a nurse, that are able to open up to something more than they ever were before. And again, I open myself to spirit to use me anywhere, any place that you need to do your work. And I think that's the people that are brought into our area. Um, you can stand in line to get a soda at the store, and there's people all around you. And though you don't necessarily speak to them or interact with them, I can kind of shut my eyes and see them as that beautiful light of spirit and just kind of just send love to them and say, you got this. You can do this. You're having a great experience. We're all soul. We're all on this planet now and off to somewhere later on. Let's be buddies. Let's be friends. I love you. Love you. What a wonderful thing to say. I love you. It may be one of the people watching, it may be them next. I mean, people go before you do, or you go before they do. That's it. It's one or the other. I I had a stroke um 6 months ago. It was December. This is May, and I was completely paralyzed. Um, if I didn't have my phone in my hand, I couldn't have called 911. And I just fell on the floor. I fell into the wall, knocked my teeth out. I was completely paralyzed. And it was interesting. I went to the ICU floor where I used to be a nurse, and I recognized, the floor, and it was like, oh my gosh, I've taken care of patients in this bed that I'm laying in, and I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't speak. I was curled up and totally paralyzed. And I thought, because I had such a horrible headache, I thought maybe it was a bullet. I thought maybe there was a drive-by shooting. And I had this pain. And the doctors and the nurses would come through and just treat me like a doorstop. They didn't speak to me. They didn't tell me what was going on because now it was my turn to be non responsive. And all my patients for 4 decades I took care of and spoke to and explained everything to them. No one did that for me. And as I got better, I wrote a big letter to everybody in the staff. But I used my meditation and went inside my brain. I found that there was a clot, and I used my meditation that I meditate every day, and I've been meditating for years. And I think I healed myself along with spirit. But what a lesson that was to be a caregiver for 40 plus years. And now once I'm put in a position to be a care receiver. And it just felt like everything in the universe was complete. It was okay. And I heard the doctors talking about putting me on hospice. And I said I had no idea what was going on. I could think completely, but I couldn't even bat an eye. I couldn't do anything. And I made a remarkable healing. And I'm almost completely back to normal now. But as horrible as it sounds, I feel like I had such a blessing to finally get to see the other side and feel extra gratitude that what I did for my patients and for people in general, to respect them and love them and speak to them and to tell them everything's going to be okay and I'm going to take care of you and you're loved and you're worthy and value. Even when you don't say it out loud to people, like in public, when you just feel that love that you have for your fellow soul, not the body, the soul that's eternal. The bodies fall away and the soul is eternal. And now it was my time, my turn. And that was a very valuable lesson. I made it through. I'm still in the body. I'm trying to share my stories while I'm still here. When I'm gone, I don't want any of this left, forgotten. I want to share my experiences, and I'm so grateful that you've had me on your channel, and let me get to share this with everybody. It's so funny because I've taken care of stroke patients for years. Some kind of get better over time, some don't. I mean, a lot just die. When I was a hospice nurse, we had so many stroke patients that died. And when I heard the doctors talk about putting me on hospice, I was thinking, oh my God, I must really be sick. But actually, even though I was in a lot of pain and I was completely paralyzed, I was in so much peace. I felt spirit. I felt like I was cuddled and nurtured and rocked and held and kissed and loved. I, this is terrible, but I had a great time with my stroke. I really enjoyed it. And, again, I practiced meditation and I used the meditation that I practiced and I reduced my consciousness down to a tiny little speck. And this is how I started IVs on patients. I hope I'm not talking too long, am I? Okay. When I would, they called me No Miss Dave because I never missed starting an IV on somebody. And what I did in my meditations, took this class. It was called the Silva method, and they teach you how to reduce your consciousness down to like the size of a cell, and to be able to look inside your body at the cellular level. And I used that technique, and I would put my consciousness on the tip of the needle. So when I would start the IV, and you go through the skin, and then you got to put the needle into the vein, and then you push this catheter on, I could actually see it. And I never missed an IV. So I used that technique when I was paralyzed. I meditated, and I do this countdown and do this little ritual thing that I do to go into alpha brainwave activity. And I was able to go to the cellular level in my brain, and I found a clot. I was expecting to see a bullet. I totally thought I'd been shot, but I wasn't. It was a clot. And I used my meditative techniques. I made friends with the clot instead of seeing the clot as an enemy, and it's destroyed my body, and it may kill me, it's paralyzed me. Instead of doing all that, I gave it eyes and a nose and a mouth and hands. I made it like a little puppet, and talked to it. I talked to the clot that's in my brain that's blocking the nerve functions going to my body. And I asked it as if it were a friend. I said, yeah, you're interfering in my body. I'm totally paralyzed. Can you work with me and let's resolve this? And I imagined the clot talking back, saying, "Hey, Dave, yeah, sorry about that. Let's work on this." So my meditations, while I was laying in ICU, the clot and I dislodged it cell by cell, one piece by one piece, and dissolved it and moved it into the blood flow, and we just disseminated the clot down to absolutely nothing. And I was home. I was out of the hospital in 9 days. I was in ICU. I was out of the hospital in 9 days. I went home with home health. I had speech therapy for a while. They fired me I think after 6 weeks. I was doing so much better. I've got like a little scar there, but everything's gone. The clot's completely gone. And other than a little bit of balance issue, I'm pretty much back to normal after being in ICU and a hospice candidate myself. So instead of working in fear and reacting, I worked friendship with the clot, and we worked together, and brought everything back to normalcy. And I'm sure the doctors and the all the medicines and everything that we give, and I know all those medicines, that did a lot. But I really think working with a spiritual flow and not being in panic mode, but being in love mode, and made friends with the disease rather than to see it as the enemy. And here I am. Here I am. It worked. It worked. Lift it up. Lift it up. You're just below it. See everything as high as you can because you're just below it. I'm using that again and again and again in my life, and I have now for a quarter of a century. So I share that with you. They teach it. There's several teachers that teach it on Zoom, so you can take it on Zoom. I took it, I think, in 1980. So I've been practicing it for a while. It's effective. It's easy. It's systematic. And after you practice for a little bit, you put your three fingers together, and you can actually go right into alpha. And I worked in the hospital. I actually did studies on me in the sleep lab because they had the high tech EEG machines, and they would wire me up and then have me meditate, and the doctors would study me. I could go, yeah, very deep meditation, very low brainwave activities in 2 minutes. So it works. Farming community back in the Midwestern part of the United States. And it was a very tiny, small community. We lived in a town, but all around us was cornfields and cows. That's what we were famous for out there. My mom liked to go on to this church in a nearby smaller community. She had friends there, so on Sunday mornings when we would drive to church, it would be like 10 or 15 miles through cows and corn. Cows and corn's a small little farmhouse, and then cows and corn, until we got to this tiny little church. And it was wonderful. The people were so nice, and I made friends there. One particularly, I was probably about 12 years old, and my friend Lee was probably around 16 years old. So living in another community than I did. I only got to see him on Sundays, and we would just hang out together, just have a really good time, go to Sunday school and sit in church next to each other. And I always looked forward to seeing Lee. Well, one day we were going to church, and my mom and dad are in the front seat. I'm in the back seat. We're driving down this 2-lane highway, cornfields, cows, farmhouses, that's it, heading on the way to church. And way up ahead of the road, I saw somebody standing at the side of the road. And, there's never anybody out there. So as we're getting closer and closer, it just looked familiar, but I couldn't quite see it. And as we got closer and closer and closer, there was my friend from church, Lee. And alongside the road, there would be a big ditch, and then like a little hill, and then it would go into cornfields. And that little hill kind of kept the water. We got a lot of rain there. It would keep the water from rushing into the road. And Lee is standing on that little hill. So it's about 4 feet away from the road, and about 4 feet higher than the road. And I'm coming up on him, and there's Lee. And I'm telling my dad, slow down, slow down. Here's Lee, here's Lee. Psh, we just drive right on by him. I said, there's Lee back there on the side of the road. He might need help. And my mom and dad said, well, we didn't see him, so on we go. And I'm thinking, well, he might need some help. Can we stop? And, well, we didn't. He was wearing a white dress shirt, black pants, black slacks, and a black belt, and very nice shiny black shoes, like what he would have worn to church. And I thought, well, okay. So we get to church, and I go to my Sunday school class. Lee's not there. And after Sunday school, which is about an hour, then we join the whole congregation, and we have the church group. And I'm sitting with my mom and dad, and I can see Lee's parents sitting over there sobbing. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And at the end of the church meeting, the minister says, let's all say a prayer for Lee. He's been missing for several days. And my mom looked at me and she just said, don't say a word. And, at the end of the service, everybody's walking out. Well, I run up to his parents and I say, I saw Lee on the side of the road. We drove right by him. I saw him clear as day. And I told my parents to stop and they wouldn't. Well, now they're mad. And they run up to my parents, why didn't you stop and help our son? And they said, well, we didn't see him. We didn't see him. We're sorry. So on our way driving back home, Lee's parents are in their car and they're following our car. And so we're driving back, and I'm hoping I can find Lee because there was like no road, there was like no landmark. It was just cows and cows and corn, and every now and then a little farmhouse. And I hope I can find where he was standing. And we're driving on the way home, them following us, and up there in the distance, there he is. He's in the same spot on the side of the road. Of course, now it's the other side of the street. We're heading the other way. And I'm telling my dad, slow down. There's Lee. We just drive right on by him again. I said, you passed him. And, my parents said, well, we didn't see him. So they wouldn't slow down. So I opened the car door. I was going to jump out. And, of course, they slow down. My dad's mad. And I say, yeah, I'm going to go show you where Lee is. So I jump out of the car. My dad pulls over. Lee and Lee's parents, which were much older people, were in the car behind us, and they pull up behind my mom and my dad. And I'm running past them, and everybody's looking around because they're not seeing him. I see him clearly. And I had to run because my dad drives pretty fast, and finally get up to where Lee was standing. And Lee's parents are backing up slowly, trying to keep up with me and wondering what I'm seeing. My dad's running up the road, and so is my mom. And I approach the side of the road, looking at the field and looking up where Lee was standing, completely solid. And I'm saying, Lee, you're going to get in trouble. Here's your mom. They've been looking for you. They mentioned you in church that you've been missing. Here they come now, come up with an excuse, what happened. And he's not looking at me. He's not responding to me. He's just looking out at the horizon. So I would have been about, oh, I got goosebumps. I would be about 4 feet underneath him. And he's just, not paying a bit of attention to me. And, my dad comes up, and here's his old parents, and I'm looking at Lee and say, Lee, here's your mom and dad. Say something to them. And they're looking at me like I'm nuts. They see absolutely nothing. And I was a tiny little 12-year-old, and my dad was pretty tall. And when he was staying there, he could look down into the ditch between the road and this little levee going into the cornfield. And it was all filled up with weeds. And they would trim the weeds like once a year. And this was summer. So there was a lot of weeds there. And he saw something in the weeds. So my dad's getting down in the mud and the muck and the water, sitting there and starting to pull something and move the weeds around. And as he moved the weeds around, I could see a handlebar of something, a bike or something like that. Well, it ends up, we didn't know this, but against Lee's parents' wishes, he bought a motorcycle a couple days prior to that. So my dad now he's just down in the mud, and it's just, up to his calves, and he's pulling the weeds, and he's yanking on this handlebar in the bike. And he says, it's Lee. He's gone. And the more he's pulling, the more, trying to free the motorcycle and his body out of the mud. And I can barely see what's going, because mud was just everywhere. And I could see him pulling something up, and it was Lee's body. And it was just a mess. Lee's mom passes out and falls on the road. And her husband's, trying to get her up and revive her, and my mom's over there trying to help her up. And by then, cars are starting to stop and people running up to help. And my dad's just pulling and pulling and pulling. So I'm looking down at Lee's mom, thinking, what should I do? I'm just a kid. And when I turn my eyes away from Lee and I'm looking down at his mom, I clearly heard him say very, very slowly, he said, I'm sorry, Mom. And I could hear it right now. And I was looking at her, and they were lifting her up. And I said, Lee just says, I'm sorry, Mom. Well, they're basket cases, and, my mom's doing her best to help them. And Dad's pulling his body up, and the motorcycle up, and all these people are coming and helping. And my parents have me get in the car and just go sit. So I was there for probably about an hour or so, and the police show up, and other people are taking care of the situation. And pretty soon my dad's trying to clean himself off, and we get in the car, and we go back home. And of course, everybody's feeling bad. We're sitting around the table, and we had some supper, and kept talking about it, and they kept asking, well, what did he look like? How did he sound? My parents had seen spirits too, and I had seen them as a child. So this is not an unusual topic for us to have talked about, but it was just interesting. They didn't see him, but I clearly saw him. And that night, I'm up in my room and getting ready to go to bed, and there was a knock at the door. And it was law enforcement, I don't know, police, sheriff, something like that, came. There was a couple of them, and they wanted to talk to me. So my folks called me down, and sure, I'll tell you whatever I can tell you. And I went over what I saw. Well, they didn't believe it for a moment that I saw him. They thought I killed him. They thought I killed him, and that's how I knew where his body was. They thought there was a suggestion that I had ran him off the road. Well, I'm 12 years old. I had a rickety old bicycle, and I lived in another community. How am I going to go all the way out there and run my friend off the road? And there's no landmarks. If I didn't see him standing there, I never would have found that spot again. Anyway, and they came back another time and drilled me again. And then my parents put their foot down and they stopped them from talking to me. And they did answered all the questions. They would have me stay in my room, and they buffered, all the accusations. Lee's funeral was a few days later. I didn't go. I don't remember if my parents went or not. But the next week or the week after, we went back to church. And of course, it was very sad. And we get there, and people were very rude to us. They were very quiet. Lee's parents would glare at me. They wouldn't even look at my parents. And the other people around wouldn't speak to us. So after church, as we're leaving, the minister called my parents to the side, and my folks had me go sit in the car again. And when they came out to the car, they said, "This is the last time we're coming to church." So I don't know if words were said or if we were asked to leave, but we never returned to that church again. And what a shame, because my mom had family and friends there. So I was in school, and the other Lee belonged to a different school system than I did, but he was a farmer. And the farmers in his area were friends with the farmers in my area. They had their own kind of community. So I worked with a lot of farm kids. And they would beat me up at school and shove me into the lockers and trip me on the stairs. And they'd say, "Well, that's for Lee. That's what you get for, hurting our friend Lee. When are you going to come clean about Lee? When are you going to admit what you did to Lee?" And I said, "Well, I didn't do anything." And I told my classmates exactly what happened. I told them exactly what I saw. I saw him. I saw him clearly. And we were able to find his body. They probably wouldn't have found it, for months and months later when they finally mowed the ditch. No, some of my classmates believe me. The farming kids didn't. And it was a miserable high school for the next 4 years. And finally, when I graduated, I moved out of town, and I've never been back. And my parents sold the house. They stayed for me. I wish they wouldn't have. And they moved out of there too, because there was a lot of pressure on what happened about me finding Lee's body. So I never went to a class reunion. I just didn't want to be around those people. I graduated in 1973. So last year, in 2023, it was my 50th class reunion. And I thought, after all this time, there's not that many class members left. I should go back and just see everybody. So I made arrangements and got a hotel and booked a flight and was ready to go back. That's about 2,000 miles away from here. And a week before the reunion, I get a call, and I was officially uninvited to my own class reunion, my 50th class reunion. And then they told me that several of my classmates are trying to locate some of Lee's distant family members and see if they can get the police to reopen the case to see, what really happened to Lee. It was crazy after all this time that these people are holding this grudge against me. I feel absolutely blessed that I got to see my buddy. I got to see Lee. I got to give his mother his very last message that, "I'm sorry, Mom. I can hear it right now. I can hear it and I can see him right now. And no time did he look at me. He just stared out at the horizon. And when we had gone back to church, it was like a week after or 2 weeks after, he wasn't there. I kept looking. He had gone. Whatever happened, I don't know. Was he there? Would anybody else that can see spirit would have seen him? I don't know. Was he there because he knew I was coming by? I don't know. I have absolutely no answers. But I saw a soul. I saw a soul, and he looked good, and he was purposeful because he gave me a message to tell his mom. So he was conscious and he was willful, and that has stayed with me my entire life. What a beautiful, wonderful experience. Yeah. You would think after 50 years, and actually this happened more than 50 years ago from my reunion. So it was like 55 years from when Lee died. You would think they would have had one or two spiritual experiences and had some awakening, but they just totally have hung on to me being uh, a perpetrator and Lee being a victim. But I just had to release it and let it go and just stand in the power of the blessing that that spirit allowed me to see my buddy Lee one last time, and uh, and I get to give his message. So so anyway, so my friends, I told them what happened, and they had a party for me. So instead of going to my class reunion, we had a barbecue outside, and I had a great time. And what a wonderful thing that they did that for me. Ah, that's right. That's right. Spirit knew. Spirit knew. Yeah. Stay with your friends and have a barbecue. Yeah. My parents were so open to this that, and we talked about it. And we lived in a house that was built in the 1820s, and there were things going on in the house. And prior to this, my parents and myself did see spirits, especially in the southern part of the state where I lived. There was a lot of history. So I don't know. My parents supported me in it. And he would tell me, you know, what a wonderful experience this is for you. We are so glad that you got to share this message with Lee and his parents. I mean, I got hugged and supported. I had great parents that were open to this, and I wonder about people that didn't. I am absolutely blessed that my parents were into spiritual things. My mom, especially. I mean, if there was a psychic in town, or if there was mediums, or a psychic fair going on, she would pull me out of school, and we would load up the car, and off we'd go. I so many places, and saw so much of this going on. Prior to this, we were actually members of the People's Temple, the Jim Jones group. I don't know if you guys heard of that over there. Unfortunately, years later, he murdered his congregation in Jonestown. And we were a part of his church back in the early 1960s, long before it went astray and turned into something bad. So I knew him. I spent Christmas at Jim Jones's house when I was a child. My parents got into a form of Surit Shabda yoga called Ekankar and the ancient science of soul travel. And, in the fifth grade, I'm learning how to meditate and to practice on what's called the Shabda, the audible sound current, and it takes you out of the body. My parents are just marvelous. The whirling dervish used to travel around, and my mom took me to go see them. And Kirpal Singh, the guru for the Radhaswami satsang bees, he came to town when I was like in high school. My mom took me out of school, and we were going to go see him. So they exposed me to as much as they possibly could to spiritual things. So it was a marvelous. I had a great childhood. Um, I was I was raised on a farm with my grandmother, and very young. My parents were still in college, so I stayed with her. We lived out in the middle of nowhere, and there was, I mean, we didn't have indoor plumbing. We just had chickens in the yard, and lived out just in nowhere. I had developed a lung infection. It was like a fungal lung infection. So for about a year and a half, I spent a lot of time in the local hospital, and I had massive scarring on my lungs, and it's a wonder I lived. Now you could probably just take a couple pills and be over it, but back then this was probably late 1950s, very early 1960s. It was a very serious disease. And one time I was there in the hospital, and something happened because I remember all the doctors and nurses are, surrounding my bed, and they're pulling on me, and needles and panic and oxygen, and I don't know what happened, but I like sat up and walked out of the bed and just walked away from all of them, and walked out the room and walked into the big hallway. It was an old hospital, had great big tall ceilings and hallways and very lots of wood. And I could see the patients being wheeled in wheelchairs up and down the hallway. I was just looking around. I could see them, but they weren't seeing me. And pretty soon it looked like a ball of people. It was like a ball of people that had no bones. It was like flesh and a pale flesh, and they were like swirling around, swirling in and out and around. There must have been a couple hundred of them, because this hallway was so big, it completely filled the hallway, floor to ceiling and side to side, perfectly round. And they would slide in and out, and faces and shoulders and legs, constant movement. When I was a kid on the farm, sometimes we'd find a ball of snakes. I don't know why snakes would do that, maybe in the winter it keeps warm or something. And they would just swirl around like that. And that's exactly what these people were doing. And sometimes they'd stretch, and their mouths would stretch out, and their hair and their shoulders. It was men and women, and just swirling, swirling. And I just stared at it. I had no idea what it was. I still don't know what it is, but it's interesting. That was the first time I saw it when I was a child in Children's Hospital. And I later became a nurse, and I saw it 6 more times throughout the rest of my life and my nursing career in other hospitals. But as I'm standing there and staring at them, this little girl comes up. She's like in a little pinafore, and says, "You want to come play? Let's go out and play." I go, "Well, sure, let's go play." So we go through a door. We're outside. It was like a playground. There were other children there. They were kind of off at a distance. And she and I were playing. And they had this thing. I later found out it was a maypole. I'd never seen a maypole before. And it's like this post with rope hanging down and a little hook, and you run around it. And it's really not that fun. But we were playing on it and laughing, and there were some other things to play on. We had a great big ball, and we would bounce that around. And beautiful day. It was sunny, but it wasn't hot. It was just a wonderful time. And pretty soon she comes up to me and she says, "You can stay a little bit longer, but just a short period. But you can't stay here long. Yeah, you're going to have to go back." I said, "Well, why? I'm having a good time. She goes, "No, let's play a little bit longer, and then, but you can't stay." And she was walking me back in. She was kind of a dark complected. She had very long hair, and it was tightly braided into a really thick braid, went down her back. And she told me her name was Penny. And she says, "Tell my mom I love her." And I'm like, "Oh, well, can't you come in and tell her yourself?" And that was it. She kind of faded away. And pretty soon I was back in bed. And all these doctors and nurses are on me. And back then, oxygen was intense. They would put plastic all around you, and they'd fill that up with oxygen. Now they put like little nasal cannula in you. And I was in so much pain, and they were sticking needles in me and sticking big needles into my bones, into my hip. I don't know what that was about. Probably trying to get marrow samples. And, They slowly dispersed whatever the medical emergency was that I was going through. Evidently, they alerted it, and things quieted down, and they were gone. And my parents come in, and of course they're freaking out. And I'm laying there, and I was there probably for another couple weeks. There was this one nurse, it was a black nurse, and she took care of me a lot. And I was in and out of this hospital for, again, for like a year and a half. So, we kind of got to know the people. And I just instinctively knew that that was Penny's mother. So one day when I'm finally, getting a little more strength and able to talk and communicate, she took care of me and was about to leave the room. And I said, I saw Penny. We were playing. And I described what she was wearing and what she looked like in her braid. And she said to tell you she loved you. And she like freaked. I mean, her face looked like, I just grew horns or something. And she left the room. And I don't think I ever saw her again. And it wasn't till much later that when I was home and talking with my mom, and she said that Penny's mom quit after I said what I said, and that her daughter was Penny, and I described her perfectly in her outfit and her braid and her voice and her smile and all of that. And Penny had been ice skating in the winter on a lake, but the ice broke and she went under the water. And it was a long time before they found her body. I'm thinking weeks or months. But there again, that's probably the first time that I gave somebody's family member a message from their deceased child. And I can see her right now. I can see her face. She had like a little something funny on her tooth, and her smile. I can hear her voice right now. I can see her braid. I can see it all. And like it just happened this morning. And that was pretty much, I guess, my only near-death experience. And again, it was to serve somebody else more than just serve me. But that was a blessing. I've never forgotten that. I'm almost 70, so that's been 65 years or so. And I think of that almost every single day since. What an honor, what a privilege it was for the Spirit to choose me to um, to get to link Penny and her mom. So tried to research that all this time. I've gone through like ancient sketches and artwork or something that maybe somebody would have drawn something like that. Somebody did tell me that, oh, what's his name? Robert Monroe in one of his books mentioned it. And actually, I was in a class with Robert Monroe when I was a kid. My mom took me, and I don't remember anything about that. But the 6 other times that I saw it, they were all in hospital settings, and it was always in a hallway. And I worked in my first job, I worked high risk labor and delivery. Then I moved into other things and finally became a hospice nurse. I saw it actually twice in a hospice setting. We had we had rented a section of an old hospital, and we had our inpatient unit there. We had 10 beds, and most of our patients, their life expectancy was very, very short. And it was so handy if someone was not doing well in the hospital, we can just kind of wheel them down the hallway, and then they're in hospice, and we'll take care of them. And once I was going to a staff meeting, and again, it was an old hallway. It was a big hallway, and I'm about to go into the room for the staff meeting, and there they were again, and there were hundreds of them, and they looked exactly the same. They looked like pen and ink drawings. I mean, I can see it so clearly. It's like a black ink outline and an off-white inside. almost because you think of ghosts, you think of them kind of white. That's kind of what they looked like. But they clearly had features. They had eyes and nose and a mouth, and that would be like black ink. But everything else to fill in where their skin is, it was white, like an off-white. And none of them had clothes on. And they would just swirl around. And when a head would come through, it would be like pulling their mouth back, and the mouth would stretch unusually bizarrely opened. It looked like they were like they were miserable. I don't know if they were, but this constant movement and stretching, and there was no gaps in between them. So an arm and a leg and a man and a woman, hundreds of them constantly in motion. And I was standing there outside the door at the staff meeting, and my boss kept opening the door, saying, "Come on in, you're missing the meeting." And I pointed, look, and she looked, and she didn't see anything. And every now and then there'd be some staff people walking up and down the hallway and walking right through them. There is no way on earth I could have walked through that. They didn't see them at all. And finally, I stood there for at least half an hour. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I have no idea what it was, but finally, she made me come in, and I went to the meeting. And when I left, they were all gone. I see things, but I also feel. I can feel. It's like when I was taking care of my hospice patients, and many of our patients couldn't speak. They were non-responsive, but I could feel if they needed pain medicine. I could feel if they needed turned. I could feel if we had to change them and clean them. I could feel if they needed, some family member to come and talk to them or whatever. These things in this ball, I couldn't feel anything from. I didn't feel horror. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel love. It was completely neutral. And it happened at that unit and in another inpatient unit. I worked in a 10-bed pediatric hospice unit. We had newborns to ages 17 there. And I don't think any of our children lived more than 2 weeks because, generally medicine knocks itself out to take care of a child. And then finally, we would move them into our hospice unit, and we would often just move the families in too. And we took care of everybody. We took care of the patients. We took care of their mothers, their grandmothers. We took care of everybody. And once I was on a little bit of a break. A friend was visiting, and we had a break room with a glass wall, and the sun was coming in, and we had a soda machine sitting there. And all at once I saw them there. And it was a small room, so the ball of people was small also. And it was the same thing swirling. And family members would come through and walk right through them. And I kept telling my friend, look at this. Do you see this? He didn't know what I was talking about. Every single time that I saw it, it was in a medical center and in a hallway. So why is that? I don't know. I don't want to read into it. I don't want to guess what it is. I like to keep everything as factual as I can. And the truth is, I have no idea what it is. I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm the about the only person I've ever talked to that has seen that. I did get an email from somebody once, and she said when she was a girl, she saw the same thing, and it was in a hospital, but she had never seen it before or seen it after that. And she was a nurse. And I worked hospice for 17 years, and then I did 20 years of emergency room. And in the emergency room, I never did see it. It would just be random hospital hallways. So I don't know if anybody has an idea of what it is. I don't know. I don't know. And but you know what? I recognized them, and I sent them love and let them know that they're valued and that they're existing and that there's at least one person that recognizes them. And I send them love, and I wish the very, very best for them. And I imagine them, whatever experience they're going through, that's going to open up their path to a higher level. So I just send love. Just send love. You can never do wrong by sending love. If they don't want it, that's fine. And maybe they'll use it later on. So that was positive. For whatever reason, I was allowed to see it. I don't know why. And every morning, since my childhood, when I get out of bed, I say, you know, universe, every thought, word, and deed that I do is done in the name of spirit. And may spirit use me in any way that it needs um, for its work to be done that day. So I don't need to understand. I just open myself up to spirit. And I, I feel like I'm a co-worker with spirit. It's like we have a job to do and we're doing it together, but it doesn't necessarily inform me who, what, when, where, why. It's just kind of do it, Dave, and I do. And now and then I get a little fallout and get these wonderful feelings, and that's enough. That's all I need. Yeah. You know, I was thinking about that just the other day. I see so many people read book after book after book and try to mentalize spirit and God and heaven and the universe and all this stuff. It has nothing to do with the mind. It has nothing to do with the brain. Spirit's at its own level. And you experience it. You don't study it. You don't chase it. It you catch it. You catch it every now and then. Spirit opens up the itself and it gives us little hints, little whispers. Sometimes, like a dime on the sidewalk or a bird will fly by, kind of funny, or you think something and then a song comes up on the radio. It does such minor little things to get your attention and say, "I'm here. I'm listening. Are you listening?" And it comes to us in such minor, simple little ways. And it's like what it whispers to us. And what happens when someone's whispers? You lean closer and you think, what'd you say? What'd you say? And Spirit wants us to do that. It wants us to lean closer and and again become a co-worker with it, not someone just studying it and thinking about it. It's to be experienced. I remember a quote by Paul Twitchell, and I read this when I was just a kid, and he said, "God is caught, not taught." Wow, isn't that the most true thing you ever heard? You you touch in and become a part of it, and not just read and discuss and argue about it. So I don't read books on this stuff. I've never had to. I have my own experiences, and for whatever reason, the more you appreciate, the more you have gratitude for the experiences that you have had, more comes through. And if people aren't having experiences with spirit, or they're questioning, was that God, was that the universe, was that whatever, you don't do you don't try to push it, you don't try to chase it. All you need to do is remove the roadblocks that keep you from communicating with spirit itself. It's already there. It's with you. It's with us 24 hours a day. And if you don't see it, it's because you've put baggage up in front of it. You've blocked up the door with boxes and suitcases and memorabilia and old hurts and old attitudes and old belief systems. And somebody said something to you when you were 3, and I'm mad and I'm not going to let go of that. And that's another pile of debris that separates you from spirit. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to do anything. Just remove what separates you from the universe. That's it. It's simple as that. And you can do it in a twink. You can do it in a moment. And that's what I finally I figured out after all these years. It spirit and universe. It doesn't want to make it difficult. It just waits for you to relax and allow it to come through. So that's my thought. Oh my gosh. It was the hospice that I worked and I worked in several. The first one, it was a 35 bed AIDS unit, and this was about 1990 to 1993. There was this horrible crisis of HIV and AIDS back then, and we had one medicine that was actually toxic. It's the only thing we had to give these people. So did we help them? Did we poison them? Who knows? But it's all we had, so we did what we can do. And there was this group that opened up a facility. It was a closed down nursing home, and we just took in AIDS patients. And we just loved them, and we didn't have money, we didn't have stuff, but somehow we made it happen. And finally it grew from 35 beds up to 55 beds, and then the money disappeared, and we had to close, and what a shame that was. But we would have children up to, and then people in their 80s from blood transfusions that were dying. But I had this one lady. This is one of my most favorite stories. This was just amazing, and she was an older woman. I don't know, in her 70s, 80s, something like that. She was non responsive. She was right at the end. Many of our patients that would come in to die, their life expectancy was 72 hours. So, we didn't have time to get to know them or the families or anything like that. It was just, we hit the door running and provided as much comfort as we could. There was no way to cure them, so we could keep them comfortable. We had the most wonderful staff. So again, before the beginning of my shift, and I would say to the universe, use me in any way that you feel is necessary. Yes, and on my way in, I would get feelings on my patients that there's going to be somebody that's it's got some traumatic brain injury, and a lot of times, like a stroke, people don't medicate them because they're just laying there, but you have no idea if they're experiencing pain because they can't move their face and go like this. They can't cry out. They can't ask. And I could feel it was like this person needs medicine. And generally we gave morphine. Morphine flowed like wine where I worked. And, I would get there and we'd tidy him up and I would just start with the medicine and just medicate him. I could tell, they needed comfort. And I would talk to my patients and say, you're here in hospice, you had a stroke. Um, uh, you're not going to be here much longer. You're getting ready to move on. I'm going to let you know that I'm your nurse. I am the best nurse in the state of Arizona, and I'm going to take the best care of you anybody ever got. And you're going to be safe with me. And I talked to all my patients, whether they responded or not. And when I worked pediatrics, we had many birth defects. We had many newborns dying. We would have 12, 13-year-old mothers taking care of their dying newborn child. And I would talk to the children too. I just talked to them all. But this one lady, there was something about her. I really liked her, and I don't know why. I looked up her name. It's like I don't remember her, but I just felt like a kinship with her. And she was non-responsive, and yeah, I had cleaned her up and took care of all my patients. And a patient down the hallway needed something extra. I forget, something happened, and I had to go down and take care of her. And when I go down the hallways, the doors are open, and you kind of look in and just check on your patients as you're walking by, making sure everything's okay. I went by this woman's room who's in a coma, and when I went by it, the side rail was down. She's sitting on the side of the bed and just sitting there and looking at me, and her hair's done, and she looks like she's 30 years old and smiling. And I walk by and look at her, hey, looking good, and keep walking down the hallway. And then I stop and think, what did I just see? That woman's in a coma. What's she doing sitting on the side of the bed? So, I'm taking my steps back. Well, what was this? And I look in her room, and she's back in bed. And the side rails are back up, and she's having some agonal breathing. And I had just cleaned her, just taken care of her like 20 minutes or so before. And when I saw her, she had two legs hanging over the side of the bed. I had just taken care of her. She only had one leg. Her other leg had been long ago amputated at the hip. And it was like, oh my God, I just saw her soul. She just showed me her soul. Oh, I'm just getting such goosebumps. She just showed me her soul. And I went up to her, and, she's just laying there, um, not responding. And I spoke to her. I said, "You're ready to go. You're like the butterfly that just stepped out of the cocoon and it's stretching its wings and drying it off in the sun and stretching the muscles, getting ready to fly off." I said, "Well, go for it. And thank you so much. Thank you for showing me your spirit. While you're still alive. What a treat." And I repositioned her and went down the hallway and took care of the person that I had to take care of, and came back and I told all my staff what I just saw. And they're seeing stuff too. I mean, we're all seeing this stuff. It's a house of death. In every room, at least 1,000, 2,000 people died in every single one of our rooms. So there's stuff's lingering all along there. They run in to see if she's sitting on the side of the bed again. They did, that experience was over. So at the end of the shift, I'm going home. She's still alive and still comatose. And, I said goodbye to her, and, I'll be back tonight. And I don't know if you'll be here or not, but if not, thank you. Thank you for what you showed me. And so I get home and open the front door, and I'm going down my hallway. And there she is in my hallway. I see her standing there, though she's, young. I mean, this woman's 70, 80 years old and, just really looked bad. I saw her in the hallway. I knew it was her. She looked like upper 20s, maybe 30. Her hair looked like she just got out of the salon. It was just kind of waving down. She had like a white robe-ish thing and just beaming, smiling at me. And I looked at her and I said, "Well, thank you so much. Go have a wonderful existence. I appreciate you showing me, you know, your soul before you died. And probably, I'm going to guess that you just died." And she slowly faded away and off she was gone. So I ran to the phone and I called work. I said, "You need to check on the lady in room 2. I think she just passed." And they said, "Well, we just came out of there. She's still here." I said, "No, go look. Go look." And they did, and she had just passed. She had just died. So I saw her spirit. I saw her as soul before she died and after she died. And why she shared that with me, I have no idea. I mean, you would think that she would have loved ones or friends or someone, to touch in with. I was a stranger. I don't believe we've ever met before. I don't remember her. But what an absolute blessing. And that's been about 25 years. I have thought about that every single day in the last quarter of a century. What it was like winning the lottery to get to see spirit. It does exist. Spirit's separate than body. Spirit maybe in is in the body or around the body, as long as the physical body is existing on the planet Earth. But spirit is not encumbered by body. It's not trapped by the body, and it's there before and after death. So that is my absolute proof that there is life beyond death. There's no death. You just kind of move on. It's like they take an old jacket off and throw it on the table, and I'm going to wear something different, and off they go. What a marvelous thing that she did for me, that she showed me her spirit. I have told that story so many times, and I tell it at work, and later on I went on to the emergency room, and I still told it there. And people are like, "Oh yeah," and then the other nurse said, "Well, this happened to me," and nurses love to get to open up about that. For some reason, I saw a lot, but I think I've been open to spirit my whole life, and um, and I appreciate, and I'm so grateful. And again, that removes all that baggage that separates us from spirit. And and when you don't push, and when you allow spirit to do what it wants, it's like a a door opening inward, and spirit comes through that door to you. And if you push, you're pushing the door shut. The door can't open. The more you push, the more you argue, the more this can't be, and I don't understand this, and what's going to happen. You're pushing the door shut. You're putting more baggage between you and spirit. You got to open up and relax. Relax and let the door swing open. And then there you are. You're working with spirit, not ignoring it, but participating, participating on all levels. That was a marvelous, marvelous experience. I had so many in hospice, and especially hospice, and I worked night shifts, so it was quiet, and we didn't have administration, and we didn't have all the busyness, and and I think the kinetic energy of day shift made it kind of difficult for some people to see things, but at night, especially with the children. Children saw things so differently than adults did. And especially our children that were 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, for some reason they saw spirit different than what adult hospice patients would see. Adult hospice patients often saw their family members, and they would come in and they would be speaking to them, and we would hear the patient side of the conversation, and every now and then you could see like the outline of someone, like at the foot of their bed or on the other side of the room. It was like someone shining a light down, and you could see their head and their shoulders. And I tried not to interfere because they're there to see the patient. But what a wonderful opportunity, and a gift, that even to be able to just see that and know that there's a conversation going on and someone's coming in to show up to help this person and get them ready, to go on to their next adventure. That's all it is. It's their next adventure. I was going to start a channel on cooking because I was raised on a farm, wanted to do down home full cooking techniques. But I decided this stuff is much more important. So it's called Uncle Dave's Kitchen. It's on YouTube, and hopefully you'll put a link below to my channel. That would be awesome. Uncle Dave's Kitchen. And down the road, I'm going to actually like cook biscuits and gravy or something. I'll do some cooking things. I'm coming up with another hospice video that I'm doing. Absolutely one of the most amazing things that's ever happened. But then I say that about everything. Spirit totally used me to avoid a horrible catastrophe in many people's lives. And what a blessing it was. And I'm about to record that hopefully tomorrow. So it should be out soon.